Seems like a big obstacle to self-development for many people, an obstacle to getting started. Some idea of just not being ready, of being too weak, too lacking in willpower, unable to get things started. So I think it's very helpful to always remember that it's okay to start from zero, from absolute nothing, absolute beginner, absolute nobody. It's perfectly good to start from this bottom. And not only is it okay, but it seems like in some ways it can even be an advantage. Because if we're willing to be absolutely nothing, be at the very bottom, start from zero, we can really, for one thing, we don't have any barrier that says, I'm not able to do it. I don't have the prerequisites. Because we're talking zero. There's no prerequisites. There's no knowledge. You know nothing. You have no skills. You have no abilities. This is the idea of being total zero and just accepting, starting from total zero. Being willing to take the very first steps. And there's nothing getting in our way. There's no preconceptions that we might need to unlearn. We don't need to unlearn anything because we know nothing. We don't have to undo practices because we're just starting with absolutely blank, zero, bottom. It seems like a big reason why it's hard to do this is that it really is embarrassing. It's embarrassing to be a zero, a nobody, to have embarrassingly bad skills. It's hard to face people with pride and dignity while being completely incompetent. So, because we don't want to appear incompetent, we don't want to appear like a nobody, we want to preserve the image of at least avoiding the worst. We can try to hide in being average. Hide in the average because at least it doesn't stand out. Somebody who's really, really bad at something would stand out. Someone who's average, well, they might just get ignored. And when we're trying to hide, well, being ignored is exactly what you want if you're trying to hide. If you have a weakness you don't want others to see, then being ignored is the solution. That's what hiding is. You are ignored because you are not seen. And yet, if we hide in this kind of average world, it's so difficult to actually make any progress and get any better. Because for one thing, if we're pretending to be average, but we actually suck, then we're just going to keep sucking. And we don't really have a chance to get better. And we can just kind of pretend that everything's okay and pretend that we're average. It seems like a recipe for not getting anywhere. And I know I've certainly done that myself, just hiding behind this idea of being average. Oh, I'm within normal parameters, within normal range for these things, so I can just ignore them and pretend that there's no issue. But when I was able to, the feeling of not having enough, of things not being enough, of my life being incomplete. That feeling really was growing on me over a few years. And it reached the point where I was ready to take some drastic steps to restart, to reboot my life, to make changes and really start this whole path of self-development. This idea of zero and starting from zero at the bottom is very clear to me from a few years ago when I started exercising again. I had exercised many years ago, but then I stopped for many years. And I had become very weak from not exercising. I came up with all the usual list of excuses why people don't exercise. But I realized that in order to make my life better, I had to become stronger, and that included physical exercise. So I started to read about exercise. That's the way that I went to it. This is physical exercise. I was reading about it, for a while before I even started it. I realized that, okay, I'm just going to start with some absolute basics. And I'm just going to be at home on the floor of my living room, and I will try some very basic exercises. And my willpower was so weak too that I couldn't even just concentrate on a workout. It was just too boring for me. I was unable to put that focus in. So I wasn't even having a concentrated workout time. It was while watching TV, watching a show, a movie, videos. I would have my entertainment, and then rather than sitting and watching, I would attempt to, okay, I'm actually going to do some basic exercises. So, starting with classic bodyweight exercises, one of the most classic exercises of all, the push-up. I go to do a push-up, and I cannot do one push-up. I found that my elbows and my wrists were so weak from years of no exercise that I was straining them just by being in the push-up position, in the plank, the top push-up position, and going and attempting to move through the push-up movement. My elbows and wrists were so weak that they were being overly strained from doing a push-up. And I was unable to do even one push-up. Now this is the bottom. This is being at the bottom when it comes to physical exercise, being unable to do even a single push-up. I mean, this is embarrassing. I'm embarrassed even now telling it. The only thing that makes it less embarrassing is that now it becomes a good story that I can tell as part of my journey of self-development. At that time, it was just, wow, I am embarrassingly weak right now. I am unable to do even this most basic of exercises, even in a single repetition. I think it's so easy to want to avoid that embarrassment so much that we basically just stay away from it. Like, it's so easy to say, well, I'm just not good at exercise. That's not me, and we can come up with our excuses to feel bad. I'm an intellectual, I'm a smart person, I use my brain, I'm not like one of those meatheads who is all about exercise. But that's pure excuse just to feel better about being unable to do physical exercise. Even using the word unable, saying I'm unable. Well, really, it's a matter of being unwilling. It's so easy to find any kind of excuse for whatever we want to do. It seems to go for everything in life that we are so good at finding excuses. And so if we want to avoid embarrassment, we'll come up with a story for why we don't need to do that thing anyway. So it's really not important. But because I was in the state where I felt that I had nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, that I wanted to live a better life, and I was willing to do whatever was necessary, I let myself be in that nothing state, that starting from zero state, starting from the bottom state. Once I accepted it, I almost just started laughing. It became a joke. It's so funny to have been in such a weak state. But there's a certain change that happens when I was willing to accept and not mind being in that embarrassingly zero state, being the nobody. Once I was willing to accept that, then it was really freeing in a way. It made me feel like this was the beginning of a story. This was the beginning of an adventure. This is going to make a good story. It's going to make a good journey. It's going to make a good adventure. Because when you start from zero, anywhere you go is going to be quite an achievement, quite a journey. You are making a real narrative arc for yourself where you are going to have a story, and it may be a good story. When you start from zero, the smallest thing that you're able to achieve is a big step. I'm trying to find a way to describe that feeling, but there's something about accepting that zeroness and being okay with starting and being in that place that put me in a good frame of mind to then start, of course, doing half push-ups, doing push-ups on my knees to start with, until I developed enough basic strength to be able to actually do real push-ups. So if even level 1 seems too difficult, then it's like going to level half. If level 1 is a push-up, I had to take it down to level half in the half push-up. It seems like this is something that can even be good at any stage, because that's just an example of a certain benchmark, the benchmark of push-ups, and then can I reach that benchmark? But no matter where we are in life, it seems like we can always see it as a baseline, a benchmark that is like, this is my zero level. If you're running 5K and you're doing 50 push-ups, if that's your zero level, then and assuming that you want to push that further, then you can see that as, this is my baseline, this is my zero. And now my adventure, my story, is to go to double. And the same we could say with earning money, same thing with finding, of course, the ultimate goal that fitness and money only support, which is living a meaningful life. And whatever stage we are in that, in the feeling of depth and meaning in our lives, we can see that as a level 0 and find a way to go further. But whatever place we are now, there's something very powerful in simply not trying to avoid embarrassment, not trying to be at a respectable level, but simply accepting, here I am, the bottom, level 0, and let's move up from here.